Welcome to Behind the Recipe. I'm your host, Christina Hitchcock. Join me every week as we dive into the joys of cooking, explore kitchen tips and tricks, and share delicious recipes that will inspire your next meal. So, whether you're a seasoned cook or just learning your way around the stove, there's something here for everyone. Let's get cooking. Today's episode is a little spicy, but not in the cayenne pepper kind of way, but in the hot takes kind of way. We're talking about kitchen rules. Now, not the ones grandma swore by or the ones plastered on the Pinterest sign that says, kiss this cook. I'm talking about my rules, my non-negotiables in the kitchen. These are some of the habits, shortcuts, and philosophies that I stick to no matter what. And some of these might surprise you. So grab your coffee and let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is pasta. And I never ever rinse my pasta. So this is a little controversial. Why? Because that starchy coating on the noodles is like culinary glue. It helps the sauce stick like it's meant to. If you rinse your pasta, you're washing all of that magic right down the drain. The only time, there is an exception to every rule, however, the only time I'll rinse pasta is for a cold pasta salad, like my spaghetti salad. Otherwise, let it be starchy and beautiful in all of its gloriousness. Now, number two has to do with bacon. And listen, I love bacon just as much as the next person, but cooking it on the stove, not in my house. It splatters, it smokes, it's messy, and there's always a lot of cleanup that happens if you cook bacon on the stove. I am all about the oven baked bacon life. I lay it out on a foil lined baking sheet. In fact, I use the non-stick foil just to be safe, and I pop it in a 400-degree oven for about 20 to 25 minutes. And I pop it in, I don't preheat the oven. I put the bacon in, I turn the oven on, and then I walk away for 20 to 25 minutes. What I get is crispy, hands-free, and no grease burns. It just sits in that bacon grease in the oven and cooks itself, and it doesn't make a mess of your oven. This has revolutionized bacon making in my house. Okay, moving on to my number three rule. I never skip salt, even in sweet recipes. Now, you know, I did an entire recipe on seasoning, or an entire episode on seasoning your food. But salt is not just for savory dishes. A pinch of salt in cookies or cakes or even whipped cream really balances the sweetness and brings out the other flavors, right? It's like the supporting actor that makes the star shine. So trust me on this one. Once you start adding a little pinch of salt, you'll never go back. And this is a trick I learned. Geez, it was like when I first got married, I took cake decorating classes at my local Michael's store, and they teach you how to make the buttercream. I always wanted to learn how to make the perfectly frosted cake. So I took this class and they teach you how to make the buttercream, and you know how there's so much sugar in buttercream. They're like, you have to put some salt in so it's not cloyingly and disgustingly sweet. And that was a tip I learned way back then, and I have never looked back. So I always add a pinch of salt, even to sweet dishes. Now, rule number four, I never store tomatoes in the refrigerator. Whole tomatoes tend to be mealy tomatoes, like when they feel like just they don't have a good mouthfeel. I don't know how else to describe it. It's so gross. But I keep mine on the counter unless they're about to turn and go bad. Then I might pop them in the fridge, just till I can use them up really quick. But this rule also applies to garlic and onions. Refrigeration can really mess with the texture and flavor. So, give your produce some of that room temperature love, right? You don't have to keep them cold. Think about when you're buying your produce. This is what I do. Look for where it's stored in the grocery store. Tomatoes aren't stored in the refrigerated section. They're usually on a little display outside of the refrigerated area. Same thing with garlic and potatoes and onions and so many of our other produce items. They're not actually stored in that refrigerated section. And if the grocery store is storing them there, you should be storing them there too. Okay. Last rule, rule number 5. I never follow a recipe exactly, even my own. I know. This one sounds crazy coming from someone who writes recipes for a living, but here's the deal. Recipes are roadmaps, not strict directions. I always encourage people to adjust for taste, ingredients, or hell, even your mood, right? Swap out the herbs, add some heat, take away some heat if you don't like it. Use what you have on hand. Really make a recipe your own because that's when the real magic happens. Now, like every rule, there's an exception to this one too. Certain baking recipes you kind of got to follow to a T because there's like all kinds of sciencey things happening there, right? The yeast has to work or the leavening agents have to work or you need a certain amount of fat. So you just have to beware. But for the most part, I'm playing with flavors and I'm monkeying around with that recipe. And that's why sometimes it's hard for me to actually post recipes on my website because I don't ever measure. I measure with my heart. I don't I don't follow exact measurements every time I make things. And it's hard for me to actually write a recipe. I have to be very intentional about it and think about it when I'm going to post a recipe on my site because I have to go back and make sure everything is measured precisely. But I'm always playing around with things and it's just something I love to do. I think that's where the fun happens in the kitchen. And sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay. So these are my top 5 kitchen rules that I never break, and they help me cook smarter, cleaner, and really with a lot more joy, and I have more fun with it. But now I want to hear from you. What are your personal kitchen rules? Send them my way over at itisakeeper.com/BTR, and maybe I'll even feature a few in a few episodes. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Behind the Recipe. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and picked up a few tips that you can try in your kitchen. And if you love this episode, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast player, leave a review, and share it with your friends. And I'd love to hear from you. So send me your questions, your feedback, and your recipe ideas. Just head over to itisakeeper.com/BTR. Until next time, happy cooking. And remember, everything's better when shared in the kitchen.